There are 171,476 words in the English dictionary. I'm here to propose that it only takes one to change the rest of our lives forever. Now, this one word can take us to the tops of the highest mountains. It can get us to jump out of perfectly good airplanes. This one word can take you into the most freezing cold water that you have ever been in. Not to mention moonwalking across a barren road in the back streets of Iceland. And if we can learn anything today from our friend Karen, I think it's important to include humor in our classroom. So this one word can get us to do handstand competitions right in the middle of our college classrooms. By now, I know you're probably wondering what this one word is. But before I share it with you, I think it's more important to understand why it works in the first place. And it turns out that we're all familiar with a concept that is built on something we've never heard before. We've heard of the butterfly effect, but most of us don't know it as chaos theory. Now, the idea is simple. A butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world. And over time, things start to change. Weather patterns start to shift. What happens is the clouds traverse across the sky. Now, what you've heard is that a tornado would end up on the other side of it, but what I like to think is that we're left here with a perfect sunset, right here in San Diego, California. So this idea of one word, one behavior, one small action can lead to infinite, unpredictable, unexpected opportunity. Now, I was wondering, is this something that, just works for me, or does this work for more people? So I decided to recruit the best people I think that there is to recruit for studies. And you know who that is? My students. So I recruited over 1,000 students over the semesters that I've been teaching. And I had them engage in something I call comfort challenges. And what that means is these students have to do something intentionally outside of their comfort zone, like saying yes to something that they'd normally say no to. And after they wrote up their reflections, after I went through 1,000 of these entries, I found one thing that absolutely blew my mind. This idea that stepping out of our comfort zone, that saying yes to something that we typically say no to, drastically changed these people's lives in a positive way. I think it's time that we meet some of these students. So first up, we meet Brian. Brian was a happy-go-lucky young student at Miracosta College, a lover of all things action sports. He loved to skate. He loved to wakeboard. He loved to surf. He did it all. Brian had the great idea before I met him to build his own skateboard. So he took this skateboard out and he went for a ride. Next thing you know, Brian ended up in the hospital. Brian got into an accident on his skateboard that left him in a coma for 5 weeks in a place that looked like this. When he woke up, there was one word that circled around in his mind, and that word was no. His friends asked him to hang out. He said no. His teachers asked him to participate in class. He said no. He was a lifeguard at the time, and his lifeguard friends and coworkers said, you need to make more small talk with the goers on the beach, the people on the beach. He said no. And then I had the amazing privilege to have Brian as one of my students at Miracosta College. And after working through a semester together of him saying yes to things that he wanted to say that word to, that no word, some things started to powerfully change. He started to say yes to his friends asking him to hang out. He started to say yes to the people in the classroom asking him, the teachers asking him to do these assignments. And if you saw Brian now, this is what you'd see. Given a thumbs up, because his life had drastically changed as a result of one word. Now, Brian's not the only student who this happened to. Our next student, his name is Jack. Jack was ex-military for 24 years, a 42-year-old student. And Jack had a difficult time readjusting to civilian life. Jack was the kind of student who sat in the back of the classroom, constantly checking the door, constantly scanning his perimeter to make sure that he was safe and that the area was secure. Jack came up to me after class early on in the semester and he said, "Mr. C, I don't think I can do these comfort challenges. I don't think I can say yes to the things I want to say no to, because why would I?" And so I said, "It's up to you." And naturally, as the other students started to do it throughout the semester, Jack started to do it too. Now, Jack was unable to be with his family, his friends, his children. He didn't feel comfortable spending time with anybody. In fact, he spent most of his time sitting at home remembering the battle that he was in. Now, after a semester-long journey of stepping outside of his comfort zone and saying yes to things that he wanted to say no to, by the end of the semester, Jack hosted his very own barbecue for all of his friends and all of his family. And he was able to clink beers and clink sodas with all of his loved ones, something he had not done since he returned home from the military. At the end of the semester, Jack came up to me, and he handed me something called a challenge coin. He said, "Mr. C, this is something we use in the military when we want to thank someone for inspiring us or for leading us to great change. Now, I wish I could stand before you and say that I was the reason that it happened to him. But I told him, Jack, I didn't do it. In fact, you're the brave one. You're the courageous one. I just gave you a platform. So I'm here today to say that every single one of you has the bravery and has the courage that Jack had. I'm not the reason you might start saying yes. I'm not the reason you might start going out of your comfort zone. You are." And that takes us to our final student, a student named Sasha, also ex-military and 45 years old, a single mother of two. Sasha was deathly afraid of heights. I'm not talking like, she couldn't be up in a crane or up in an elevator. She couldn't step up onto a bench without freaking out. And if we can learn anything from Mike today about fear, it's a manipulative emotion that holds us back from the life that we want to live. So I worked with Sasha all semester on getting her to step literally outside of her comfort zone and to say yes again to things that she wanted to say no to. So you might be surprised to find out that where we began was actually just on a curb outside of our classroom. For most of us, that's not a big deal. For most of us, we step up on a curb all the time. For Sasha, she couldn't step up onto a curb without feeling her heart flutter just a little bit. So our first challenge, step up onto this curb. And I'm happy to say that she did it, but not without some hesitation. As we moved through the semester, about halfway, I said, "Sasha, can you step up on this bench for me?" She said, No, I'm not going to do that. I said, "Sasha, what's the one word we talked about?" And she said, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." So of course she was shaking and she was panicked and she grabbed my hand and she stepped up onto the bench. And the smile on her face after that, it's something I've never forgotten. Now, after a series of these 10 challenges of her stepping outside of her comfort zone, by the end of the semester, she did something that absolutely blew my freaking mind. She jumped out of a plane and she went skydiving for the first time and for the only time that she ever thought she never would. I'll say that again. She never thought she ever would. She came up to me at the end of the semester. She was like, "Mr. C, I don't even know what to say. All I can say is that taking your basic public speaking communication course taught me something I never expected to learn. And that's that anything in life is possible." So now I'd like to share my own story with you of how powerful this word and this stepping outside of your comfort zone can be. This story begins in a small suburban town in Ohio. I was studying in my grad school master's degree, trying to decide whether or not to get my PhD, trying to decide what I was going to do with my life, trying to finish my thesis. There was 100 things circling my mind. And right then, while I'm sitting in that cold, dark room, I get a text message. And the text message is simple. It says this: "Hey, will you help me with my business?" Now you can imagine, I had 100 things in my mind. I was choosing whether or not to go get my PhD. I was choosing which school to go to. I was trying to do my thesis. Oh, and not to mention, I was sick throughout this whole time. I was coughing, I was hacking, and I could probably imagine that most of us in here would have the same thought right now. So I typed out no, but I didn't send it just yet. I put the phone down, and instead, I took a breath of fresh air, went to the bathroom, coughed, sneezed, did whatever I needed to do, came back to the room, picked up the phone, and I still don't know what caused me to do this to this day, but I picked up the phone, deleted the no, and instead I typed out yes, hit send, put the phone down. That word, yes, took me to a coffee shop in Santee, where I met with this person about their business. And what I thought was going to be a 1-hour coffee meeting turned into a 4.5-hour unforgettable meeting. In fact, the owner of the coffee shop came up to us and said, "Hey, we're closing. We've actually left it open a little bit longer for you two, but we're closed now." I couldn't believe it. What felt like 1 minute had turned into 4.5 hours. Fast forward, and we start traveling the country together. We start to jump off bridges together. We start to explore forests together, and even fly the plane. Not the one that we jumped out of. Don't worry about that. And ultimately, we fell in love. Now, when I think back to that small room in Ohio, and had I said the word no, I can't imagine how different my life would be had I said no. See, I think that there's something that we can all take away from this, and it's this idea that we have a giant door in front of us. When people ask us to do things that make us uncomfortable, when people when they request of us things that we don't want to do, when we want to say no, there's this giant door that comes up. But I do want to be clear that yes is not the only word that opens this door. Now, for those of you that have seen the movie with Jim Carrey, I'm not here to say that we need to crank down 8 Red Bulls and sleep with the elderly. Instead, I'm here to propose that in every moment, in every decision, there's a countdown. And that countdown is right to our decision where we decide, do we want the rest of our life to stay the same, or do we want our life to change in a positive way? So one word can drastically, unpredictably, and infinitely change our lives. Now, the next time that you're faced with 171,476 words of whether or not to do something, I challenge you to think of the one word that can possibly change your life forever. Because you just never know what might happen. Thank you.